When I think about the sports stories that really resonate with people, they often fall into one or two categories. In the first, you have the people who always seem destined to reach the top. The people who seem to quite literally speak their dreams into existence. We're talking the Alis, McGregors and Furies. In the second category are what I'm going to call the Rockies. The people who were written off by everyone but somehow managed to turn it all around when the time really counted. Now we're talking your Mickey Wards, Michael Bispings and Jake LaMotta's. But we always have to remember that not everyone does shine on the big stage. It's kind of hard to say this, but most people never actually reach their true goal in life. That can be in sport, that can be in business, and that can be in relationships. Most people just never really reach their pinnacle. They only ever make it halfway up the mountain. And when this happens, you have to take a deep breath, tell yourself that enough is enough, and move on, because to be honest, that's all you can do. But it's at this point when your dreams lay smashed on the floor that you need to be asking the questions of, what do I truly want and why? Because the answer may not be the one that you set out with. And I don't think any story relates quite as much as this as the story of Adrian Broner. Adrian Broner, to most of you, is probably somewhere between a clown and a talented, if irrelevant, pain in the arse. But I think Broner's story now is as interesting as ever with the rise of Ben, Ennis and Virgil Ortiz. It really is easy to forget that Broner 10 odd years ago had a level of hype that outstripped all of them, and for whatever reason, it just wasn't to be. Broner arrived on the scene in a way that, to be honest, you don't really see too much as a fight fan. Normally, when you have these prospects on the come up, you have the commentary team saying how the guy is absolutely fucking amazing and the best thing since sliced bread. But with Broner, let's just say that the commentators were a little bit more skeptical. In his first televised fight that I can find, Broner fought a guy called Fernando Quintero, and to be honest, Broner was given everything he could handle. If you look for this fight on YouTube, you'll find a video that has the word robbery in the title, which kinda says it all. Broner didn't really look that bad in there, he just looked like an amateur, which, to be fair, he kinda was at the time. Even though Broner had a load of amateur fights, he didn't actually fight in the amateurs over the age of 16, and you could still see the amateur style in him. It was a lot of pokes on the back foot and check lefts when the opponent moved in. There wasn't much in the way of variety, and as much as anything else, there wasn't much that said that Broner would end up being a 4-weight world champ.
See, what I was talking to Bernard about, this is where the transition from the amateurs, yeah, it's great to have all those amateur fights. It sounds good, you know, we can announce you as a great amateur and you're calm in the ring and all, but you have to make that transition from being in amateurs where you just throw a lot of punches to being in the pros where you got to make sure those punches count. And you can see Broner hasn't made that transition. Not yet.
There were also a couple of defensive errors as well, and a few commentators even spoke on the wide feet.
Look right here. See how wide they are? He can't move. They're too wide apart. He can't move anywhere.
See, with the wide stance, he tends to sway back from leading punches and then comes back to counter. He's always in a position to counter. But you can pick up dangerous habits when you've swayed back, nowhere else to go if the other guy keeps coming.
It's not like Broner was crap early on, far from it, but he looked a little unsure of himself, like what he was doing with his hands, feet and head just weren't quite lining up correctly.
finish.
Well, he was matched pretty high, you know, so they obviously got a lot of confidence in him. But I think technically he makes some terrible mistakes. Upper body, he's very good. Hands are good. Defensive's good. Lets his punches go. But from the waist down, the legs are a disaster. Such a wide stance. He can't get into range, can't get out. He's just rooted to the canvas, and that spoils him altogether. So he can do something if they change him.
Broner, this early in his career, was just a little bit one-dimensional. He was a counter-puncher with only really one counter-punch, the check left. But over time, you did start to see some form of variation in the attack. Rather than just sitting back and waiting, Broner did start to step forward to try and draw the shots out of the opponent. He was nowhere near the finished article, but he looked more than the borderline amateur that he did against Quintero. And all this progress would be tested in his first real fight against Daniel Ponce de Leon.
On tomorrow, your co-main event. This will be our first fight featured on HBO's Boxing After Dark.
This fight against De Leon was one of those real contrast fights that I just love as a fight fan, because De Leon is everything Broner isn't. Southpaw, rugged, high volume, just the lot. And like in a lot of matchups, this contrast turned into a really interesting fight.
Adrian Broner, the problem, one of the best nicknames in sports right now, but at the moment is just a big talking, fast southpaw prospect. And tonight we find out if maybe he's something more than just that.
He made 6 successful defenses of his junior featherweight championship.
When the first bell went, you could see pretty quickly what the game plan for each fight was going to be. De Leon was buzzing around the outside, and Broner was holding his ground and was coiled for the left hook when De Leon came in. To be honest, if this was your first viewing of either guy, you'd say that Broner should be absolutely ripping De Leon to pieces, because De Leon looked almost ridiculously novicey at times. But in willing to look a little bit stupid, he did have his spots just letting the hands go. And also, because 90% of the time Broner would throw the left hook as a counter, De Leon did have success reading these shots and going under the left hooks. However, because Broner was clearly the guy with more talent in there, as the fight went on, he did start to make some adjustments.
Don't make it out of no close fight. Put them together. You throwing one up and you ain't coming nothing back to nothing back. Okay? Let's go.
All in all, it was a pretty good fight. A really nice clash of styles. Broner never really dismantled the guy or anything. I mean, I had it 6-4, but it was one of those ticking of the box fights for a prospect on the come up. And now that Broner had got the win, he was building up some nice steam for a title shot. For anyone watching this now, this is the point in the video when you're probably expecting me to start to rinse Broner's personality, to say that this is just another story of a cocky fighter writing checks that their talent can't cash. But I'm not going to say that, because Broner this early on in his career seems like a pretty nice, chill guy. He's charismatic without being a prick.
Respect to Ponce de Leon. He came to fight. He wasn't backing down, and he kept coming. But I stayed focused. I listened to my coach, and I did what I had to do. You know, a lot of people thought that I wouldn't be able to do 10 rounds and keep my composure and stay slick to beat this guy. But as you can see, you can't hit what you can't see. I took some shots, but I gave a lot. So I got the decision, and now we just going up from here. The sky's the limit. It's the problem, and y'all gonna see a lot more of me on HBO.
And more than that, when the facade drops, Broner really does seem to be a nice guy. Yeah, his personality isn't for everyone, But it is actually quite hard to watch some of these clips looking back at this young guy and seeing what he'd become, or more just what people would think of him.
Well, Adrian, congratulations on the win. Very impressive taking care of business in round one.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody from Colorado Springs, the Army base, Old Schools gym, and I want to make a big shout out to all my kids, and a very big shout out to my oldest son. He'll be 4 on Tuesday.
All right, happy birthday to your son. Congratulations.
However, what Broner was doing in the ring, as well as some of the gimmicks, meant that he really was starting to generate some hype. And it all came to a head in his first proper world title fight against Vicente Rodriguez.
Want a good clean bout? Give the people what they came for. Touch them up, may the best man win. Put a gun in the court.
Broner was just 22 here, but in my mind, this is the first fight where he looked like he had that mature Broner style. He just didn't look like an amateur anymore, only throwing that left hook. What you saw instead was a Broner standing his ground a bit, using the shoulder roll in the pocket, and also digging the right hand in. This was a very solid performance from Broner, and yeah, it wasn't the best opposition, but you couldn't say it wasn't impressive.
He landed some body shots there, but the crowd
Rodriguez. Now can Broner finish him? A little wild right now. Chops a right hand. Good left hand to the body. Digs a right to the body. Left hand puts down Rodriguez. Yes.
Adrian Broner responded to a rough, tough fight like a real fighter. Stuck to his game plan, yet never shied away from the fight and knocked his man out.
Coming off the Litzau win, now he stops Rodriguez. Here's Michael Buffer.
Cincinnati has a new problem, but it's a good one. The winner.
I dreamed of this, and I put on a great performance, and I'm just ready to move forward. Sky's the limit.
Broner had just won his first world title, and yeah, he'd pissed off some people, but to him, that was all part of the process. But what everyone didn't know was that this was just the start of the Broner show.
From Cincinnati, Ohio, Mr. HBO, aka I do this for fun, aka I will knock you out. 22-0, 18 knockouts. Give a round of applause for Adrian, the problem Broner.
Good straight right hand, and down goes Perez. 4, 5, and he's not going to make it.
Adrian, the problem Broner.
Listen, man, they call me the problem, but you could call me the can man, because anybody can get it. Africans, Americans, Dominicans, Mexicans, anybody can get it.
It's only really looking back now do you realise how entertaining Broner was to watch. He's one of those few fighters in that real sweet middle ground where you can watch him both with a notepad or with 4 empty pint glasses next to you.
No question, he heard him. Mouthpiece is out. Good uppercut. Litzau's down. And it's over in round 1.
In terms of a standard Broner game plan, what he'd do is take the centre of the ring and just have a look at you in that first round, often taking a little bit of early heat in the process. Then after that, he'd just start to walk you down behind that shoulder roll defence, almost baiting you to come in. When the opponent would then be backed up and forced to throw, Broner would then step back and counter with a left hook or right uppercut. A Broner fight would often look like a cat and mouse game in there because the opponent would just never really seem to have the firepower to keep Broner honest. Broner just looks so much faster, stronger, and to be honest, better than anyone else.
Escobedo was instructed to go to the body, but it's Broner landing vicious body shots and picking off Escobedo's attempts.
And as it turned out, it was the DeMarco fight at lightweight that eventually catapulted Broner into stardom, whether he was ready for it or not.
On November 17, it's a World Championship boxing doubleheader you won't want to miss. With a potent combination of speed, defense, and power, rising superstar Adrian Broner, aka The Problem, steps up to the lightweight division undefeated to face champion Antonio DeMarco, a Mexican southpaw determined to solve the problem.
Our challenger tomorrow night, 12 rounds, the most anticipated fight of 2012 lightweight championship.
Broner billed this fight as him taking on the best fighter at 135. And to be honest, he wasn't really wrong. But it wasn't exactly the best time in the division with Marquez and Guerrero having just moved up. I'm not saying that the division was bad or anything, but what I will say is that I don't think Pete Broner really got a chance to get loads of good names on the resume, and that wasn't for a lack of trying.
I want to say, you know, I wanted to fight Ricky Burns, but he put on his track shoes and ran again. Went for another lap, you know, ran away from me again.
However, at the end of the day, Broner did face the WBC champ at 135. And in my mind anyway, this was Broner both at peak skill and at peak entertainment.
I never wanted to be a moment where Adrian Broner's on TV and you're like, okay, I'll be back. When Adrian Broner's on TV, I don't want people to blink.
Even though Broner was taking on a guy who was considered to be among the best at 135, this was definitely not seen as a 50-50. Broner was about 10-1 on, with DeMarco at about 7-1. And when the fight did end up happening, you could really see why. It was just one of those beautiful dismantlings. DeMarco was just getting lit the fuck up from everywhere. From early on in the fight, you could see that Broner's speed was always gonna be causing issues. And against a guy who only really knows how to fight coming forward, DeMarco walked into a bit of a speed tunnel here. I think DeMarco's game plan was maybe to try and break Broner's spirit by coming forward into him, but it just really didn't work. And the fact that DeMarco is no back foot fighter either meant that once Broner started to back him up, DeMarco really had nowhere to hide.
Because DeMarco doesn't appear capable really at this point of hurting Broner with any one punch.
That punch hurt.
It's very difficult to turn it around.
A body punch.
The fight probably should have been stopped before it was, but at the end of the day, at least we got to see what was Broner's most exciting performance, with some absolutely frightening punch stats. And yeah, there was the usual flash from Broner in the post-fight, but for all the bravado, you could still see the real human underneath.
Do you think you might have just looked too good tonight and it's going to be hard for you to even get fights at 135?
I don't think I looked it too good. I think I looked 10 good. The problem stands, you know, 25-0, 21 knockouts, two-time world champion, 23 years old. You know, they say before you make something happen, you gotta see it yourself. And I've been seen it, I dreamed of it, and now I'm living my dream. So I just want to thank everybody who supported me. You know, this is not the last. This has just begun. The Adrian Broner, Mr. HBO show.
The guy at this point was flying high, and it seemed like nothing could stop him. And what came after this was a series of performances where the trash talk got louder and louder, and the hype train just got bigger and bigger.
From Cincinnati, Ohio, here comes the champion. Yeah, let's go. The Problem Broner.
There's the body shot for Broner. Uppercut lands for Broner. Starting to get more accurate. Starting to pick Reese off. Out and grab.
I mean, you break him down when he start holding you and stuff, okay? All right, don't let him hold you. You know what I'm saying?
And start climbing.
Right uppercut. Wars Gavin Reese.
He's hurt pretty bad.
Reese trying to get to those body shots again and slow Broner down a little bit. But Broner is getting into the target practice area. It's because he's an offensive fighter. He is there to try to knock his opponent out. Another uppercut, this time with the left hand.
To the body, though.
Sick, how you been? Left uppercut. Now Reese is in trouble again, and Gary Lockett is up on the ring apron with the white towel.
Adrian, the Problem
Unquestionably, the top two American fighters right now are Floyd Mayweather and Andre Ward. The question becomes, how long is it before we begin to put Broner somewhere near their league?
His weight 146 and 1/2 pounds. His record 32 wins, 4 losses, with 7 wins coming by way of knockout. Tonight, making the second defense of his present title, here is the 2-time world champion and the current defending WBA welterweight champion of the world, introducing the Magic Man, Paulie Malignaggi.
Hey, I'm gonna knock you the fuck out, man.
You pussy.
I'm gonna knock you out,
I
man.
read right through you. You got bitch in you.
I'm gonna knock you the fuck out. Paulie, I'm gonna knock you out.
Don't
Hey,
spit
you
my
gonna get a nice check.
You
gonna get a nice check.
You gonna get a check. It ain't about the check. It's about fucking.
It's gonna be your first check and your last check, though.
You're a great champion. You're a great champion. You're a great Italian who wears a hat to the side. No, I'm serious. You got good talent. I want you to keep your day job, because after this, you're not going to be relevant in boxing unless it's with a microphone.
Did anybody else notice he was here like a half hour before the press conference started and he pretended he was late? Did anybody else notice that? Because I had people calling me like, yo, Broner's here. And you know how I know they weren't lying to me? Because they knew what he was wearing. So then he shows up an hour into the press conference like he showed up late. He's trying to show up fashionably late. Stop trying so hard, bro. Just do what you gotta do. Stop trying so hard. Just people see right through you.
146.8 pounds for Adrian Broner. 146.4 pounds for the champion Paulie Malignaggi. WBC lightweight champion of the world, introducing the undefeated Adrian the Problem Broner. The Magic Man, Paulie Malignaggi.
Let's go. Fight, protect yourself at all times. Obey my commands at all times. Touch him up, may the best man win.
But in the center of the ring, it's like a ridge. Touches nothing but air. Quick exchange as they both bounce out of the exit. Just past the minute mark of the second round. Malignaggi attacking the body. Malignaggi with the jab to the body, then a 1-2 combination. There's a nice straight right hand that tags Malignaggi. Straight right.
Anybody expecting a fight that wasn't interesting, they're in the wrong spot. This is a fascinating fight already so far.
Very entertaining start.
It did. Malignaggi has has thrown many more punches and many combinations. Now, not everything landing, and you see him tossing the jab out there. Clearly, the issue in this fight is Malignaggi's not a big puncher, so the problem is at one point will that lack of power be an issue for him? Can he box this whole 12 rounds without getting hurt by Broner, without having to hurt him?
And Broner kneeing him, and then an uppercut being admonished by referee Benji Estevez. High guard by Broner, peekaboo. There's a nice left hook by Broner, backing up Malignaggi and actually bull rushing him into the ropes. Again sticks the jab, misses with the right hand. Malignaggi attacking the body with the jab. Flicks one upstairs, 3-punch, now putting together the combinations and landing on Broner, for the Broner defending as well.
This is where you see the sides. Broner looks strong, he's coming forward. Paulie's not a big puncher, he doesn't respect Paulie punch, and that's where the fight changes out. His right hand's pretty good.
There's a right uppercut that jacked the jaw of Malignaggi, another right hand, but Malignaggi comes forward, has Broner on the ropes, lands the right. Broner using the jab, backing but finds himself in the corner. Broner lands the right hand, and then the double left, one to the body and one to the face. There's a right cross by the challenger. It is over. A tremendous fight between Paulie Malignaggi and Adrian Broner. The fans in Brooklyn on their feet.
Inside, Tom Shrek sees it 117 to 111 in favor of the winner and the new WBA welterweight champion of the world, Adrian "The Problem" Broner.
A supreme shout out to Al Heyman, Alliance Jewels, you know, breadwinner for this nice 18-karat grill in my mouth.
Final thought. Any regrets about anything that went on in the pre-fights and all the news conferences?
Negative. I'm good. I beat Paulie. I left with his belt and his girl.
Adrian, congratulations on winning the title.
Broner was now turning everything up to 11, and on the face of it, it was really working for him. He was now a 3-weight world champion and was actually ranked as number 8 pound for pound by Ring Magazine in late 2013. But underneath the surface, there were some cracks starting to show. Coming in 3 pounds heavy against Escobedo wasn't the best sign, and he also started to develop a tendency to almost just shut down when his opponent was throwing. This wasn't a major issue when he was fighting at the lower weights because he could just shrug off the punches, but at the higher weights it started to look less like Broner was just taking the air out of the opponents and more like he was just taking the shots.
Lands upstairs for reach, and that gets a big rise from the crowd. And he lands 2 more body shots.
He caught Broner in the middle.
Couple of rounds.
But that straight right hand is starting to close the eye a little bit. You may want to start trying to keep that off of him.
It's also worth saying that at the higher weights, Broner just wasn't the puncher that he was down at lightweight, and so any intimidation factor of walking down an opponent just wasn't the same. Even at the time, people were saying that the 2-weight jump to welter was too much, and after facing one of the world's lightest punchers in Paulie Malignaggi, Broner made the fateful error of jumping in with one of the division's heaviest.
Lopez hurting Maidana along the ropes.
En algunas peleas a mí me ha pasado que me he caído, me han tirado y me levanto y con más ganas de seguir peleando.
This is what I mean about Maidana. He comes back.
Es como que me sale de adentro ir para adelante. Me enojo y quiero noquearlo.
Even though in hindsight this was a bad move for Broner, Maidana was hardly the danger man he'd become known as. And that showed in the betting odds. Broner was 5-1 on. But through all the build-up, Broner just continued to talk. And whereas before it had some wit and charm about it, somewhere along the way, he just became a regular button pusher. I mean, look at the difference between these two clips. The first in the build up to the Perez fight, and the second with Maidana.
He's still chubby. I can tell by his earlobes. Boy, I'm talking about kid head, I'm talking about kid retarded. Hey, I'm talking about that boy head look like a Gatorade cooler with a doorknob on it. Man, you wanna say what's up? Say what's up, Maidana? My daddy gonna kick your ass. Tell him. Tell him.
So, what you had was a perfect storm. You had one guy with the biggest hype train I can remember, fighting above where he should have been, speaking a gang of shit against a quiet, power-punching underdog.
I don't know if he's faking like he don't understand English, but after December 14th, he's gonna speak English, and the fight, I don't think it's going full 12 rounds. I'm going for the knockout.
From memory, there was a lot of hype coming up to this fight, but that was mainly because there was just so much hype around Broner, not because people thought that this would be particularly competitive. But what ended up happening was the biggest fall from grace that I can remember. This fight has already been broken down by loads of YouTubers, so I won't go crazy in depth here. But what I will say is that you can actually see how Maidana was setting up the first knockdown in the first 20 seconds of the fight by conditioning Broner to lower his guard.
The bell and round one. Adrian Broner sporting the red with gold.
So here you can see Broner lowering his hand on the body jab. Broner bites on the feint. Broner bites big again on the body jab. And here Broner reacts again on what he thinks is another body jab, only for the left hook to come up top, with the right hand for good measure.
Adrian Broner sporting the red with gold trunks. Marcos Maidana in the red and black.
Maidana, of course, we've talked a lot about his jab. Will he come out throwing it with conviction?
And he swarms Broner along the ropes.
Maidana also, as everyone knows, is definitely not a textbook fighter. And that awkwardness meant that because the right hands were being thrown from such a weird high angle, they would end up going over Broner's guard rather than being glanced off the shoulder.
It's going to be hard for him to win some of these rounds.
45 seconds left in the fourth, and there's a chopping right cross by Maidana.
In the post-knockdown rounds, you saw Broner trying to get a hold of the fight by attempting to walk down Maidana like he used to do at the lower weights. But the difference here was that Maidana was landing big, even on the back foot, with that power and awkwardness. And this of course led to you-know-what.
Oh, the hook got him. The hook got him. For the second time in the fight.
Secondly, despite Broner being a front foot guy, he doesn't really like it up close. He doesn't like the Andre Ward, Roberto Duran kind of distance. So whenever Maidana would come in, what you saw was Broner resorting to a hell of a lot of pushing, clinching, and kind of general forearm work.
Nice combination by Maidana. Lead left hook, then going downstairs. Broner dropping low, pushing Maidana away.
Broner also, like a lot of US fighters, tends to dip from the waist a lot, and as I always say when you're looking at one specific technique, there are pros and cons. But the main con is that once you make the move, and you do dip down, you are 100% committed to that dip. Because from this position here, you can't exactly throw back. So if you are facing someone who is dipping down a lot like Broner, you have two options to kind of work your way around it. And oddly enough, you saw both of them in the Lomachenko-Rigo fight. The first option is you bait the opponent to dip through feints or something like that. And when they do make the move and dip, you then let the shots go when they can't properly respond. The alternative is to again occupy the opponent with shots, but then to step round them as they dip down, so they can't easily realign with you. And I know that Lomachenko and Maidana aren't exactly two fighters that people compare often, but in the Broner fight you did see Maidana use both techniques here. You'd often see Broner biting on feints and getting caught with big shots when he was out of position.
Here's where Broner has a problem, though. He throws so few punches, it's going to be hard for him to win some of these rounds.
45 seconds left in the fourth, and there's a chopping right cross by Maidana. A jab from Broner.
And Broner, to his credit, did recognise that dipping low probably wasn't the best idea. And he did then try to stay a little bit more upright in as early as the second half of the first round. And it's also worth saying that even though I really don't like it, he did it here as well.
He needs to be active. He has the speed to be active if he chooses to use it, and if he stays confident in doing that, he's going to have to get active.
Oh, wow.
But what really gave Broner fits all night was a little step move that Maidana did to Broner's left side. It's one of those things that I don't really think anyone else has noticed, which is kind of weird considering how much shit happened in the fight. But as I say, it's something that really shows how underrated Maidana's feet and kind of just general fight IQ is.
Right hand connects by Maidana.
Same way, and he changes it. It must have been something they worked on in camp. There he changed a hook to the body.
So wide, he just doesn't know where they're coming from.
Maidana continues to invest.
Nice
good
move.
combination there by Maidana.
In the later and mid rounds, there were points in the fight when you saw Broner basically say, fuck it, and try and walk Maidana down. But Maidana was still doing his thing even on the outside, and even as he slowed down, he was still landing the hard shots. And Broner really just didn't have a response to this, apart from the pushing and the forearms.
30 seconds left in the ninth. Maidana again beginning to pick up the pace, lands a left hand. Broner comes back with a left of his own. Has Maidana along the ropes, but it's Maidana's jab that keeps Broner at bay.
Don't get me wrong, Broner showed a hell of a lot of heart, but when you have two knockdowns against you, you're always going to struggle to get the decision. And when the final bell came, the right man got his hand raised, and the fall from grace was complete.
In favor of the winner and the new welterweight champion of the world, Marcos El Chino Maidana.
Problem solved.
Well,
Broner was taken off without an interview, and Maidana went on to make life-changing sums against Mayweather. And while I laughed with everyone else at the time about this, now I'm a little bit older, there's something a bit sad about the whole deal. This was a guy who started boxing at age 6, made it out of a terrible neighbourhood, only to make it big and become a world champion. Then only to get way too ahead of himself, lose on the biggest stage, and become one of the most hated men in all of sports. I think it's the fact that Broner then is a similar age to me now that I just don't get the same pleasure that I used to when I watched this fight. Whereas before I'd have kind of revelled in seeing Broner get beat up and humbled, now I just see a guy's whole life collapse in the blink of an eye. Someone who, on the come up, did seem to be a pretty nice, genuine guy. It's something that really doesn't get said a lot when this fight is brought up now, but to me anyway, the way this fight ended, it is kinda sad. Post-Maidana, Broner fought Carlos Molina at 140, and while at the time people said that this was a good performance from Broner, I very much disagree. The thing is, if you watch this fight, it's kinda evident that the talent in the ring lies with Broner, and so all Broner did is just box Molina from range, and he did it well. But the problem was that he looked more like the amateur style Broner on the come up rather than the aggressive come forward Broner at lightweight. You may say, what's the issue with that? But in this fight there were definitely moments in there where you got the sense that Broner could have countered Molina in the pocket like he used to, but he didn't pull the trigger. And personally, I think that's because those Maidana scars were still there. He just didn't want to risk getting clipped because now he knew what could happen if it went wrong. It was a good performance, but not a good Broner performance, if you get me. And the fact that sitting and countering was so much of Broner's game before, and it almost disappeared overnight, well, it wasn't a good sign. And so, post a few fights, you'd have this mentality tested against former champ Sean Porter. And as usual when Broner is involved, some of the pre-fight antics were just absolute gold.
So I'm gonna go ahead and get into it. I'm fighting Sean Porter, a football player, and I'm fighting his dad. It's like I'm fighting his dad because when he get his check, the check come in his dad's name, and then he pays Sean. So since they both getting a check, if I kick both of their ass, would I get paid twice? Would I get paid twice?
Hey, you know you probably gonna need to be paid twice.
I'm just saying.
For all that child support, baby.
I'm just saying, man.
40% to the taxes, 15% to the first baby.
I'm just saying.
Second baby, 10% to that trainer, 20% to the, what you got? We over the top already.
He hot.
We over the top.
He hot.
You in the zero now. You stay close to this. You stay close to this.
That train, you know that. Get in front, you know that. Get it. Nah, fuck that shit. Get in front, Kenny. You know you. Kenny, get in front.
The fight at the time was seen as a legit 50-50, with Broner maybe even being the slight favourite. But when the first bell rang, it was clear there was only going to be one winner. The main issue was that Broner could only really contain Porter's inside work by again some blatant holding and stiff arming.
I got you. Let him go. Let him go. Let him go. Let him go. Stop. Here we go.
You got the sense that Broner just never really settled in there, and he was just way too defensive. The only time he really did much was in the 12th round, and even then there wasn't much in the way of countering or a shoulder roll. It was just pure aggression. It was a frustrating performance from Broner, and I think some of that frustration spilled out into the post-fight.
Listen, I still will fight anybody. It don't matter, man. I am a real animal. I am a real animal. I came to fight today. I didn't get the decision, but I'm okay. At the end of the day, everybody in here will take an autograph and take my picture.
All right. Thank you very much, Adrian.
After Porter, the next big fight was Garcia, and to me this one was a little bit different. Broner, on the face of it, was saying all the right things, and he seemed to be in a much better mental state generally.
And you know, this is gonna be a very special day for me, not only me, you know, I wanna dedicate this victory after I win to my twin brother, Andre Bronner, and you know, just to see his smile, and it's just gonna mean so much more to me.
Seeing you in the press in the build-up to this fight saying, I'm focused, you know, I've changed, I'm looking at this whole thing differently, I'm more dedicated than before. Why? Did you feel like there was something that needed to change?
It's just time to grow up, man. It's time to stop bullshitting and just take what's mine. You know, God blessed me to put me in this position, and I've really come from a city where a lot of guys make it and then they fall. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to continue that curse, Cincinnati. I want to break it and stay at the top.
But when the fight actually happened, Broner fell into the same old patterns. There was just a lack of activity. The only difference was where in the Porter fight he used stiff arming and clinching, in this fight he used his legs to avoid the exchanges. And I'm sorry, but the movement was just excessive. There was just so little activity from Broner in the first half of the fight, he basically just threw it away there and then. It was one of those really tough fights to watch if you're a Broner fan.
Good matchup.
You just heard him right there to the body. Let's go. Come on, man. You the stronger puncher. You letting him fit the park shots. You understand? Let's go. Start doing. Right now.
In the second half, Broner did start bringing the heat more, but when you give 5 of the first 6 away, you're making it very difficult for yourself. I didn't score it properly, but I don't think you can give it to Broner in a million years. And what that unfortunately meant was that Broner was humiliated again on national TV. And for a guy who put so much emphasis on his image, it was just all too much.
What was the thought process in your strategy in all of that, and how come you couldn't seem to muster when you needed that energy and that spirit that would have, you know, got you back into the fight?
Shit, it was Tom and Jerry. I had to catch the mouse.
You said it was a do-or-die fight, and unfortunately it didn't come out.
They said it's a do-or-die fight. If I fight tomorrow, everybody in this motherfucker gonna still come see me, man. At the end of the day, listen, I'm still AB. I'm still about billions. I'm still the can, man. I'm still a fighting motherfucker, and anybody still can get it. And if you want a rematch in California, we can do it.
And what about the weight? Was it just too much weight for you to come down?
I wasn't tired. I was okay. It's just he fought a better fight tonight. He was the better man tonight, and it's okay. At the end of the day, I'm still a 4-time world champion, 4 different weight classes, and when I'm done with sport, I'm gonna be in the history books.
Personally, I think part of the problem was that Broner, to me, was never a guy who really put 100% into boxing, precisely because it was never really his first love. Boxing to Broner was something he did primarily to stay off the streets in Cincinnati.
I'm gonna tell you a crazy story. So one day, got in trouble, went to jail, was facing like 57 years. My trial date was coming up. I had like a week left. I was doing 23 hours in my room and 1 hour out a day. And I was writing raps. And then I just stopped. I looked out the window, it was like a little bitty window. I'm like, man, what the I'm gonna do if I get out? I was like, all right, I'm gonna sell drugs. I was like, nah. I'm literally talking to myself out loud and everything. I think I was going crazy, but look. So I'm like, I'm gonna sell drugs? And I was like, nah, I'll be back in here. And I was like, I'm a box. I said, I made up my mind up that day. I said, God let me out of here, I'm a box.
A few miles from the ballparks and five-star hotels is a side of Cincinnati, Ohio visitors rarely see. In Mount Auburn, fighting is a way of life.
What do you think you guys would be doing if you weren't here in the gym boxing?
A lot of bad things.
Like what?
Like
Trying to rob people, trying to break the cars.
Oh, come on.
So,
you're joking with me. You would not be doing that.
Probably.
You think?
Probably. If you hang around some of the people like that, you probably will.
Broner now has been memed to shit with all this from the hood stuff, but you really do need to understand that where Broner comes from, just making it out at all is better than most. So I'm not really surprised that when he made his millions and made it out of the hood, that was almost mission complete for him.
So I'm 17 and locked up with the grown-ups and shit, so I ain't care. Everybody in my pod who was going to court and coming back, they'd be like, "What you get?" They smiling like, I got 18. They come back, "Yeah, I got 22, bro. I ain't tripping." So I'm like, damn, yeah.
I'm not saying that Broner didn't like boxing, but I think for him, it was more a means to an end. I think he was more in love with all the lifestyle and street cred associated with the sport than the actual sport itself. And the thing is that when the Pac fight rolled around, this motivation point was seen as pretty much the biggest difference between the two. Even though Pac had all the money, all the fame, and really everything he ever wanted at the age of 40, Pacquiao still wanted to fight on. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to. In the run-up to the fight, it was clear who the fan favourite was, and at the time I really didn't think about it any deeper than that. Broner has always had a bit of a victim complex, both rightly and wrongly, in how he was portrayed by the media.
If you're victorious Saturday night,
I'm gonna be victorious, man.
What's the future?
I know they all against me. This what they want. They want AB. They want AB to go out. They don't want me to be in nice cars. They don't want me to be in Rolexes. They don't want me to be in APs. They don't want me to be in private jets. They want me to lose this fight, go up under the rug, and never be talked about again. They don't want me to see the top of my pinnacle. And I'm dead serious. And after I make it look easy, I want all you motherfuckers out here who writing these badass stories about me to put something good up.
So Broner, as ever, was a bit paranoid going into the fight, thinking that the world was scheming against him. And normally I'd wave this off as Broner being Broner. But oddly enough, in this case, I actually agree with him. I think he was a little bit stitched up from the start here. It's worth saying now that before I went to all the trouble of making this video, I've never actually seen this fight all the way through. I guess at the time I just wasn't as hyped about seeing the number 4 face the number 7 in the division or whatever. And for anyone like me who didn't see the fight, it looks pretty similar to Broner De Leon, with Pac buzzing round looking for the combos, and Broner sitting back aiming to counter and sharpshoot from the outside. However, when I did finally sit down and watch this fight, my first impression wasn't actually what was going on inside the ring at all. What it was that the commentary team was fucking terrible. And I strongly suspect that there was some suspicious shit going on here. Don't get me wrong, both fighters are good spells in the fight, and both fighters definitely won rounds, but the commentary team was just so biased towards Pacquiao, it was almost a joke. I'm just going to show you some of the shots that Broner landed that weren't called by the commentators.
Has more to do than Broner's power. I was here That's a real biceps. He's all right now to throw the right hand. Let's see if he does. Yeah, he lets it go. This is round number 5. Almost to the halfway point. He's so well conditioned that both have walked towards stomach. So far they haven't been that many close fights. And this round's fairly close. But in that fight, Manny has always been a sweetheart of a guy inside and outside the ring. He's lethal in the ring. Broner just got to throw more right hands. More right hands. That's what you want to do. Go right, then back left, but then cut loose with the right hand. Got the right hand. I think you're looking at a 40-year-old man right now, and that's because of the extraordinary ability of Manny Pacquiao and the fact that
Pacquiao definitely had success, and he was definitely more active than Broner, but the combination of the pro-Pacquiao crowd and some hilariously biased commentary meant that this fight was scored way wider than it should have been. For people who care, my scorecard is up now. Plus, when you hear commentary like this in the 12th round, you really do start to question the motives of some of these people.
And again, don't forget that Manny throws a lot of two-shot punches, so we'd expect him to be high in the amount of punches that he lands. But Broner hasn't landed, but I only think of 3, maybe 4 really solid punches in the fight. Manny's landed many, many more of those.
I mean, we all know that 3, maybe 4 punches is pretty bullshit. Plus, the commentary team were trying to make Pac into some Satan-like figure.
The man has never done that in his career. He's always been a sweetheart of a guy inside and outside the ring. He's lethal in the ring, but at least the sweetheart of a guy outside.
For anyone who isn't aware, Pacquiao is no angel and has definitely done some dirty stuff in the past. But the core of what I'm trying to say here is that for anyone who hasn't seen this fight in a while, I really do recommend that you go back and watch this muted and try and take your prejudice out of it. I wouldn't be mad if you scored the fight for Pacquiao, but this was a close fight despite what the judges said.
Dave Moretti scores the bout 117 to 111. Judges Glenn Feldman and Tim Cheatham both score the bout 116 to 112. All 3 in favor of the winner. And still WWE welterweight champion of the world, Manny Pacquiao.
So put yourself in Broner's position now, putting on the best performance he has in years against one of the biggest names in the sport as an underdog. And now he's got nothing to show for it. To be honest, it really doesn't surprise me the way he acted in the post-fight. This isn't a guy who's trying to save face. This is a guy who genuinely feels like he's had something taken away. And for all the shit he went through post-Maidana, Porter and Garcia, I feel like he was a little bit robbed of a redemption arc here.
I beat him. Everybody out there know I beat him. Everybody out there know I beat him. I controlled the fight. He was missing. I hit him clean more times. I beat him.
You averaged 8 punches. Less than 8 punches was the most punches that you had in the round, and it seemed as though you couldn't get close enough.
It already sounded like you was against me. So I already ain't got a fair shake talking to you. But let me talk something. Let me let y'all know. I want to thank the whole hood who came out here. I love y'all. I did this for the hood. Y'all know I beat that boy. Y'all know I beat that boy. What they trying to do is they trying to get that money again with Pacquiao and Floyd. But it's cool. I ain't worrying about it. I'm still that nigga, man. I'm on top. Cincinnati, stand up. West Side, 2-5.
You're 3-3-1 in your last 7 fights. What will you do next?
Hey, I'm 3-3-1 in my last 7, but I'll be 7-0 against you.
And this goes even further since this was Pacquiao's first fight with Al Haymon and PBC. I mean, you can really understand why they would potentially want Pac to win this, given a potential Floyd rematch.
Floyd Mayweather, co-promoter here this evening, in the house, watching and assessing you, sometimes saying things during the fight. Will you fight him next? Do you want that fight?
You know,
Tell him to come back to the ring, and then we will fight.
And unfortunately, this is where the story really ended for Broner in boxing, in what was on paper an amazing career, but also in one where the high highs were maybe eclipsed by the low lows. But unlike a lot of fighters, I don't feel sorry for Broner in the same way as someone like a Martin Murray or a Ryan Burnett. Because unlike those guys, I do get the sense that Broner completed his goal. It just wasn't the goal that most top level boxers go for. From all the Broner footage that I've seen, two things really stand out as motivation for him. The first one is money, and the second one is fun. And Broner has achieved both in spades. Yeah, I think being a bit more dedicated could have got him the results. And yeah, having the Maidana fight at the time was probably a mistake. But in the grand scheme of things, coming from where Broner has come from, I don't think he's done badly at all. Oddly enough, when I was thinking about this script, I came down late one night and I was just flicking across channels on the TV when I came across this scene from Rush, a film that goes into the rivalry between a couple of famous F1 drivers. And when I watched it, it started to remind me of someone a little bit closer to home.
So don't let me down now. I need you busting my balls. Get back to work.
I will, Mickey, I will. But I intend to enjoy myself first. Some of life needs to be for pleasure. And what's the point of having 1,000,000 cups and medals and planes if you don't have any fun? And how's that winning?
Broner, as it turned out, was not the next Floyd Mayweather, but I can safely say that he wouldn't have wanted to be anyone else.
Gervonta, you know, Jesus has got power. But many say he can be wide at times with his shots. Do you think that will be his downfall in this fight?
Everything has come along fantastic. I can't wait. I can't wait. Yeah, look at me. I can't wait. We got a couple days away, and I can't wait. This isn't a game. You know, but then again, I'm not here to disrespect anyone. I am here to fight. I am here to win. All right, and I plan to do that. I hope that everybody will be in attendance April 21st. The thousands that will be at the Barclays Center, the millions watching around the world, and this is action, all right? Tune in, watch this fight.
Jess, thank you. Adrian, any open remarks?
Yeah,
Grab the mic, please.
Walking fast, faces passing, I'm homebound.
So those are your opening remarks.